Congratulations, lovely reader. You've discovered the Dark and Stormy Book Club podcast. This is Janelle Patrick, the author of The Last Tea Bowl Thief, wishing you happy listening and happy reading.
Hello, and welcome to Dark and Stormy Book Club. We're on vacation. We've taken a few weeks off to catch up with our families, and during this time, we hope you will enjoy a few of our favorite episodes from the past. This week's offering is The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. It was a great book, and we enjoyed it. It is from episode 177, and we hope you enjoy the recast. We'll be back the 19th of July with new episodes, so be sure and join us then. Happy 4th of July. That's what tomorrow as I'm recording this. So I hope you enjoyed it with your families, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Bye. I'm Ann Dark.
I'm Tracy Stormy.
And I'm Kathy Knight.
And together we are
It Was a Dark and Stormy Book Club.
A podcast for mystery lovers.
Welcome.
If you enjoy our show, please consider contributing to the Dark and Stormy Patreon. By becoming a patron, you will help us create better and quality content. There are also benefits to becoming a patron, such as exclusive content and Dark and Stormy merchandise. Become a supporter at patreon.com/darkandstormybc. Check our website for the link. We appreciate any and all contributions. Thank you.
We just read the most amazing book and thought we would do a full review on our impressions of The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. A female apothecary secretly dispenses poisons to liberate women from the men who have wronged them, setting 3 lives across centuries on a dangerous collision course. Rule 1, the poison must never be used to harm another woman. Rule 2, the names of the murderer and the victim must be recorded in the apothecary's register. One cold February evening in 1791, at the back of a dark London alley in a hidden apothecary shop, Nella awaits her newest customer. Once a respected healer, Nella now uses her knowledge for the darker purpose, selling well-disguised poisons to desperate women who would kill to be free of the men of their lives. But when her new patron turns out to be a precocious 12-year-old named Eliza Fanning, an unexpected friendship sets in motion a string of events that jeopardizes Nella's world and threatens to expose the many women whose names are written in the register. In present-day London, aspiring historian Caroline Parswell spends her 10th wedding anniversary alone, reeling from the discovery of her husband's infidelity when she finds an old apothecary vial near the River Thames. She can't resist investigating, only realizing she's found a link to unsolved apothecary murders that haunts London over 2 centuries ago. As she deepens her search, Caroline's life collides with Nella's and Eliza's in a stunning twist of fate, and not everyone will survive. Oh, can you see why we thought it was so good?
It was a very good book. The word apothecary is evocative. It draws forth visions of a candlelit storefront with sash windows, walls lined with mortar bowls and pestles, and countless glass bottles. There's something beguiling, even enchanting, about what might lie within those bottles. Potions that can bewitch us, cure us, kill us. When describing Nella's hidden shop, the author did her best to capture this allure. Indeed, many contemporary retail shops are doing the same, and it seems most cities now have some sort of apothecary shop selling cosmetics for natural recipes.
How about that? I think we should start by going over some of the main characters in the book so you get to know who we're talking about here. And what I did was I separated these out by the past and the present. So we'll start with the past. And the first character is Eliza Fanning. She's a 12-year-old peasant girl who first employee taught her how to read and write. And she gets sent on a mission to get some poison from the apothecary.
Eliza's visit to the apothecary starts another path to this story.
Yes. And then we have Nella. She is the owner of the apothecary.
Nella Clavenger is her full name.
She owns the apothecary and has a tragic past. She lost a child when she was a younger woman, and she so desperately wanted to become a mother. And you will notice in this book that pregnancy and motherhood are a theme that run through this book.
Yes.
And then we have Lady Clarence, who enlists Nella to help
in providing a poison, but this opens another door that Nella does not want to go through.
Yes, based on the rules that we told you in the beginning. So we'll leave you with that. Now we're going to jump to the present, and our main protagonist in this book is Caroline Parswell. And she finds out her husband of 10 years is cheating on her. So she decides to go on their big anniversary trip to London by herself.
It was their 10th anniversary.
James is her husband. He doesn't play a huge role in this till you get towards the end of the book, but he gets mentioned a lot. And then you've got Gaynor, who is a librarian historian who helps Caroline in her quest to find this apothecary. Those are your main characters. There's other minor characters, but they don't play a huge part in the story. Even though this book is told in 2 timelines, I felt it was never confusing.
I agree. It was easy to tell them apart.
But I will say I did look forward to the chapters in the past just a little bit more, but I felt that the alternating ones in the present were cleverly in line with what was going on in the past. I thought Sarah Penner did a great job with that.
Yes, she did. Definitely.
It's funny because until a couple of years ago, I had never heard the term mudlarking, even though Anne will go more into that, until we interviewed Bonnie McBird and she started talking about her next book in the series. She talked about Watson going mudlarking. I don't know if our whole audience knows what that term means. Anne, would you like to explain what mudlarking is?
Along the Thames River in London, this river runs right through the city, and it has been there since before London existed. If you go to the edge of the river, usually with a group because they know where to look, and the tide is out, you can find history hidden in the mud. And you walk along, you kind of shuffle your feet, you find historical things that have been there since eons. When we went, there was a Victorian piece of a bowl that got everybody excited. But then there were also pieces of mortar from buildings, buttons, scissors, coins, you name it. If it can exist in water without eroding, you can find it. I mean, they've found ships, they've found toys. The man who ran the mudlarking center that I went with, they have a small museum with the finds that they have authenticated from 1600s before the Great Fire of London. And it's really amazing, number one, that these things still exist.
I would love to do that. If I ever get to London, I'm definitely going to be a mudlarker.
Well, it's very tricky. You have to go certain times because when the tide comes back in, you're sunk in the mud.
Yeah, so that doesn't sound like fun.
No.
Well, anyway, the reason why it's important you know that part of the story is that's kind of what gets the ball rolling for Carolyn to go on this quest. She doesn't set out to go mudlarking, but she gets invited and she doesn't have a whole lot to do there, so she decides to go. She finds this vial in the mud with a strange marking on it. and more historical literature was her background. So she's very intrigued by this and goes on this journey to try to find out what this vial is. That's when she ends up meeting Gaynor at the British Library. Gaynor is the sister of the mudlarker.
He told Caroline to go see his sister at the library and she could help her research this bottle that she found. Gaynor is game. She goes and looks up all these different things and
A lot of maps.
a lot of maps.
I find that stuff very interesting. And I don't know if everybody thinks old maps are interesting, but I do.
Caroline finds directions to the apothecary shop. Now, this apothecary shop, even though I read a description, is not like your normal apothecary shop. It's an old building with a hidden entrance, and Nella sits behind this fake wall and waits for people to enter. She judges whether she will help them or not. She has to hear their story, and one of the things she has is a register. Her mother was an apothecary also. Her mother was a wonderful healer, and she kept a register of everyone she had helped and the medicine that she gave them. Now, Nella's specialty is sort of on the dark side. She is using her skills to help women who were in dire straits. Some women had 6 children. They did not want to get pregnant again. We need a medicine.
Something that modern day women do not have to worry about.
That's right. That's right. The thing is, in the old days, I think Nella would have been considered a witch.
Yeah, I kind of felt that too.
She was not accepted as a healer by
It was hard for men to accept that women were capable of anything.
but having babies, having sex. And one of the things that she does best is prepare poisons. If your husband was a philanderer, give him a little dose of poison. That's how she meets Eliza. Eliza is sent by Lady Clarence to get some poison. Now she learns very quickly Lady Clarence wants the poison to kill her husband's mistress.
Yes.
Not her husband.
And you remember the rules we went over.
And it never harm a woman. Nella is put in a position, she's damned if she does, and she's damned if she doesn't.
We won't go into too much detail because we really want you to read this book. But it's a circumstance. It's not as easy as just, okay, I'm not going to kill this woman.
Right. But then the author did a wonderful job of finding out about the old-fashioned cures.
She definitely did her homework. I don't know where she got her information, but I was blown away by some of it.
She also knows which plants are toxic and even many household plants. Eucalyptus oil is a poison.
We see that at the end.
If it's eaten.
But I do want to stress, because I think this is important, this is not a how-to get your spouse book. And I think Sarah did also a great job of showing the consequences of some of these actions.
Right. It's entirely possible that an apothecary shop like Nella's could exist in the 19th century. Until the mid-1800s, death examiners were not able to detect poisons.
Yeah. It all just looked like natural causes.
When they did autopsies, poisons were very rarely even thought of. But historical records say toxic compounds like arsenic, nux vomitus, mercury, and opium were readily available at your regular store.
Well, it was used for other purposes other than what we think of them as being poison.
Yeah, they were used throughout the house, like arsenic was used for rat poison. But it was interesting when you find out that after the 1800s, they started coloring arsenic blue so that they could see it. If it was in the patient, it left a residue.
Caroline finally discovers where this apothecary is.
Because this
Yeah.
is 100 years
Yeah.
later.
This is where you almost have to dispel some belief here because, and this is just my opinion, I really find it hard to believe that there would be a building that.
Especially in London.
Yeah, I mean, come on, Hitler bombed the crap out of London. I don't think there'd be much of a building underneath something that.
When I went to London, they are always building something.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot believe that Bear Alley still existed. Now, there are many historical sites that they've maintained.
It didn't make me not like the book. I just rolled my eyes a few times.
Also, the fact that she found Nella's register. I mean, that was written in 1800. It's possible that the book existed and still exists, but it's not going to be in a little room with a fake wall.
I almost consider this a slight fantasy book, even though it's a fiction book. It's not like it's true. I consider it something that you have to brush that aside, and still really enjoy the story. Because I really loved everything about this book.
I did too. It was a wonderful book to read. It was funny in a few places.
Yeah.
It was thrilling and suspenseful. You didn't know what was going to happen. It has little twists. I won't tell you what they are, but the story doesn't end with this event.
There's a lot more to it than meets the eye. I wish this was a series and we could read more about these characters.
Well,
do you know something?
Funny you said that. The book has been picked up by Fox Entertainment, and there's a plan to make it into a series. I would watch every episode.
Yeah, if they do it right.
If they do it right. If they don't
sometimes these
mess it up.
TV things, not so good.
Right.
There is another little thing that I'll say was not my favorite about the book, and that was Caroline as a protagonist. I felt bad for her that her husband cheated on her, but I don't know. I just thought she was a little too whiny. It also was not a good depiction of a modern woman. The whole thing with modern women is we move on. We deal with what we got to deal with. She has a job. Yeah, she got a job on the farm. I just thought she was a little too whiny for my taste, but that's me.
I thought Caroline was a good character, but I also thought she gave in to other people too quickly.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say what happened, but she did not
stand up for herself.
Right. She was working on it, but she wasn't very good at it. The story of Caroline, while it's separate from Nella's, it meshed a little.
That's what I said about how it lined up.
It lines up, and the story has a satisfying conclusion.
Yeah.
It's predictable, I think.
Yeah, some of it was. But it's still, like I said, it doesn't take away from the story. I think that some of the things I was most intrigued with was, of course, the poison itself. It was so important to her that it get done correctly.
Well, she knew if something happened and she was found out, she was going to hang. What she was doing, no matter what good it did to get rid of some people, it was illegal. And there was no way that she was going to not hang. And the threat of that hanging over her head
absolutely
made a lot of things change in the book. Now, the character I enjoyed was Eliza.
How can you not like Eliza?
She wanted to help. She wanted to learn.
And she was only 12 years old.
12 years old, yes.
And when they said, it blew me away. And I think one of the funniest things in the book was when Eliza thinks her period is a ghost.
Yes. She thought it was a curse. Yeah. Of course, back then, who's going to tell somebody? It would be your mother. She didn't have a mother.
Yeah.
She went into serving Lady Clarence at the age of, I believe they said 9 when she arrived. she never had a mother figure. I guess Lady Clarence didn't think it was important.
She had to beg Nella for her to be her apprentice. Even once Nella agrees, she still really doesn't want.
She doesn't want to give up her secrets.
And I think that the reason why is because she didn't want anybody else to take a fall. This is where the story gets very poignant. And it's because Nella so desperately wanted a child. All of a sudden, she kind of has a child because
she's very protective of Eliza. Nella's backstory is very sad. It's the reason she is what she is today. She was raised by a loving mother, but as usual, there's a man involved, and things did not work out. Nella is a loner. She really doesn't want Eliza there, but she does want Eliza there. It's just one of those dynamics where you love her, but you want to push her away. Because if Eliza is caught, Eliza's going to hang too. The significance of the little bottle that Caroline finds, it has etched on it the figure of a bear. And that was how Nella sold her potions, so people would know Bear Alley is where she kept her shop. And if you needed a poison, drop in. And she would take care of the situation.
But you couldn't
write your name in the book.
That's not necessarily true because you couldn't just drop in.
And, no. She had to know.
I mean, you could drop in and buy other things, herbs, but you could not come in and get her poisons.
Right. Unless you were approved.
Yes.
By Nella. She held that very close to her heart. And Eliza was trying to learn so she could take over. It's a very satisfying but sad conclusion.
I feel this book was a great interpretation of everyday life in the 1790s. And also, even for our protagonist and her life. I was immediately immersed in both of those cultures. Sarah is now definitely on my radar to read anything she puts out because I am a real fan now. Every character in the book was extremely fleshed out, and I felt appropriate to the timeline. And even though I said Caroline was a little too whiny for my taste, I do try to be sympathetic to that because I don't know what's going inside this woman's head, and we all have things we're dealing with. So that's why it was very forgiving. Another thing is I've always been fascinated by home cures, and I have books on my bookshelf about remedies. And if there is a natural remedy, I'm going to try to use that before I reach for some medicine. So this was right up my alley as far as that goes. And as much as this is a story about murder, it was so balanced with a beautiful tale of hope and redemption.
Very good. One thing I will say, if you read this book, I don't know if this is included in the book itself, the hard copy book, because I read it online. But there is on the website for the Lost Apothecary, there is a discussion guide for your information that has questions to ask.
So this would be good for a book club.
Yes, but it also has recipe.
Ooh.
She gives a recipe for a rosemary butter biscuit cookie.
That sounds
which
delicious.
Sounds yummy. And she suggests to enhance your book club, I recommend you serve a tray of the rosemary butter biscuit cookies. And she gives 2 cocktail recipes. One is orange brandy and one is black cherry water, which is a non-alcoholic drink. But the cherry on the cake is there is a map of Old London, which shows all the sights.
Is there a real Bear Alley?
It says there is. I don't know if that's just something she made out. But then there is a Nella Clavinger's Apothecary of Poisons. And there are some recipes in here for hemlock julep. I am not recommending you use these. And I don't know if these are actually.
Probably,
It is a great little resource. And she also has recipes for Tom Pepper's Hot Brew, Blackfire's Balm for bugs and boils, and her rosemary butter biscuits. It's a fun resource on the back of the book or in the online section. Be sure and check that out too. It'll help understand a bit of the story. Sarah was born and raised in Northeast Kansas. She grew up in a small log cabin nestled deep in the woods. This is where she lived until early adulthood, and it frames most of her memories. She began writing in 2015 after attending a moving lecture given by Elizabeth Gilbert. She was on tour for Big Magic, a game-changing book for creatives. Soon after her talk, she enrolled in her first creative writing class, and she hasn't looked back. She's an avid traveler, but her heart is stuck in London, as is mine. I love London. She graduated from the University of Kansas with a degree in finance. In 2021, after 13 years of corporate America, she left her day job and became a full-time writer. When she's not at the keyboard, you'll find her in the kitchen, the yoga studio, or running outdoors in the Florida heat. She married her best friend, Mark, and they're proud residents of Florida, where they live with their silky hair miniature dachshund, Zoe. And her website is sarahpenner.com. Be sure and check her out. That is a book we both recommend. We both loved it.
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. And that wraps up another episode of Dark and Stormy Book Club. We thank you for listening, and we hope you listen next week when we find some more books for you to read. And remember,
Life would be boring without a little mystery.
bye.